when you lay it all out, the conspiracies around COVID and the vaccine are extremely silly. But at the same time, nothing good comes from a series of tweets celebrating when some local anti-vaxxer gets sick and dies from the virus. That sort of partisan empathy blindness doesn't convince anyone to get the vaccine. It just extends the weird politicization of the virus the same way we are now seeing people omit COVID as the cause of their loved one's death due to fears of being ridiculed by both sides. And then compounds the plain and simple fact that some people simply won't understand something until it directly affects them. It's almost impossible to figure out how to convince an individual when people are literally denying COVID as they are dying from it. Like, there are just too many stories like this virtually every day. But we can at least start by breaking down the why of it all, starting with the fact that between the 1970s and late 90s, America's trust of the media took a substantial dip. This dip, suspiciously enough, corresponds with the rise of 24-hour cable news. Now, there's no proof of connection there, but you know. We suddenly had all these news stations vying for our attention, filling in huge chunks of time with opinion shows and over-sensationalizing. Raldo opening a vault with nothing in it, and so on. We grew more and more wary and distrustful. And the same way they say that if you don't teach your kids about sex, someone else will, Americans started turning to the internet in the 2000s for their news, and also their sex. Meanwhile, Facebook and other social media did a piss-poor job at regulating misinformation. They are, after all, a business that just wanted as much engagement as possible. And before they could finally take action, the damage had already been done. As we later learned, it only took 12 people to spread COVID misinformation to millions of people on social media. And before I end up branching off into a larger video about Facebook and social media and Trump-era lies and how perhaps we should stop using social media as a news source, for the sake of this examination, I'm going to define this social media, meme-posting grandma level of COVID misinformation, as Tier 1. Tier 1 are the people who truly believe that coronavirus was a hoax or created as a weapon, and that the vaccine, also known as the second weapon, is going to hurt them. These are the people we see dying seemingly every day because of these beliefs. The local conservative radio hosts, the low-level GOP officials, people who are spreading misinformation on a smaller scale while actually practicing what they preach. They are, by far, the hardest people to reach because, as I mentioned, they tend to not believe a thing until it is actually happening to them. And even then, maybe not. They are both the butt of all of our jokes about COVID deniers and the most tragic examples of them. Tier 2 is when things get pretty f***ing insidious, and can be summed up with just one person.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Here's a very simple question. How many Americans have died after taking the COVID vaccines? That's not Americans who've been killed by the virus. That's a huge number. It's how many Americans have died after getting the vaccines designed to prevent the virus. Do you know the answer to that question? Do you know anything about the downside? We know a lot about the upside of vaccines. We've been completely in favor of vulnerable people taking vaccines. But what about the potential risks?
Yeah. What about the risks of the vaccine? Asks Stucco Cargo Zooms, a man who is definitely vaccinated. Much like how 90% of all Fox Network staffers are vaccinated because they are required to be. Tucker spends most of his time questioning the vaccine, despite being vaccinated, because it's what his audience wants. Because, and I don't know if you know this, Tucker Carlson is a lying grifter with a ton of blood on his hands. He says he tries not to lie, despite his entire career being built on a lie, and the rest of his career being made of many lies. He says punching down on vulnerable people is the worst thing a person can do, while spending hours demonizing homeless people. Also, you know, all the vaccine stuff. He should face consequences, and by no means should we feel empathy for people like him. People using their substantial platform to spin stone-faced lies that will result in the deaths of anyone who listens. To put this in, really low bar terms, even Ben Shapiro has told his audience to get vaccinated, albeit among a bunch of other bullshit that undermines it. But folks like Tucker are just about as low as you can get, and exposing them might be a way to convince those at Tier 1 to perhaps change their mind. And our final tier, Tier 3. might seem less directly insidious as the former, but really gets to the root of the problem. The reason we're all in this situation.
The vaccine changes your RNA, so for me, that's a problem. So I'm here with you folks. We don't want to have the vaccine. It's about our freedom and liberty. It's not about the vaccine. They're taking away our freedom and liberty little by little. They're using the vaccine for cover.
This is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis stupidly standing next to a man claiming that the vaccine alters your RNA, a thing that isn't true. Ron doesn't correct him, and in fact, that event was specifically organized to combat Biden's vaccine mandate. So Ron just stands there, hoping to Christ that no one asks him any direct questions, because Ron DeSantis, along with being a lot of things, is a coward, much like how a lot of high-level GOP politicians are cowards, specifically, but not exclusively, when it comes to talking about getting the vaccine. Why? Because they know that the moment they support it, which they do, their base, the people fueled by blatant liars like Tucker Carlson, will turn on them. This is the monster the GOP has created. No more evident than this clip of Donald Trump himself getting booed for supporting the vaccine.
And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. Bree, you got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms.
You got your freedoms, says the desperate loser former president man. This sweaty, no-need dummy, hoping to not be torn apart by a mob of his own conception. A party that sought out and courted the chunk of America extremely susceptible to conspiracy theories and misinformation, having to watch as their base walks directly into a wood chipper that they created. It's so easy for people on the left to want to celebrate this, but the people getting hurt aren't the people who caused this. And the people who caused this are still very much in positions of power. And this monster was created by all of us. Decades of media mistrust, actual government f***ery, not taking care of our citizens, a ridiculous failure to regulate social media, lies from the government and media alike. Multiple presidents, an entire country that doesn't understand that in order to avoid a problem, you have to think beyond yourself. Even now, we're finding that our inability, or lack of interest in sharing the vaccine with the world will likely come back and bite us on the ass. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.